It is November 13, 2014. I'm Rene Ritchie, and right now we'll be talking all about Microsoft Office, Space Age, Monument Valley, Apple Pay, and the week that was. This is the iMore Show.
Do.
Da!
There's our jingle.
Nice. That was the voice of Serenity Caldwell. How are you, Serenity?
I'm doing all right, Renee. I'm a little cold, but I have the heat way up, so.
I'm cold. I don't have the heat on, but I made soup. I don't know if that's going to do anything.
Soup counts. I got tea, too.
Yeah.
My lovely history of art mug.
I've got the mint tea. What kind of tea do you have today?
Scottish breakfast. It's the only way to go.
Aye. It's like breakfast, but in Scotland.
Aye, indeed.
Ali Kazmucha, how are you?
I am good. I'm going to be the oddball out with coffee.
Nice.
How dare you?
I had my tea this morning.
And apparently I speak Scottish like Scrooge McDuck, which will make my grandfather very, very sad.
Accessible.
He was... okay, well, yeah, I can't fix that. I can try the Sean Connery thing, but I don't even think he's Scottish because based on the movies I've seen, the Spanish accent, the Russian accent, and the Scottish accent are all the same from him. Hold, I speak.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just really the amount he closes his mouth on one side.
Highlander so confused me as a kid because the Scotsman was French and the Spaniard was Scottish, the Kurgan was American, and I just didn't know how to process that.
Hey.
But yeah, okay, I'll talk about Clancy Brown a lot more later, but right now let's get into the Apple stuff. First of all, Ali, you took the newly re-released and improved Microsoft Office, which now needs less of a subscription, and you put it up against Apple's iWork and Google's Docs. And what happened? Did they fight?
I did. They fought a good fight. Now, an important thing to understand with Microsoft Office is you don't need a subscription anymore to edit documents, but a lot of advanced features such as, I think, page breaks, being able to track edits, you do need a premium subscription for those. So Microsoft, it's a little tricky because if you need more advanced features, you're still going to need a subscription. A lot of those features I found come stock in Pages, Keynote, and Numbers. Google's kind of...
Well, before you go on, is it safe to say that if you're just a regular person, you're okay without the subscription, but if you want all the enterprisey stuff, then you're probably subscribed anyway?
I don't know. I think it depends on what you're going to do with it. I know a lot of people that, if you're writing a research paper, you need to do custom footers on different pages for notes, and you need a premium subscription in order to do that. So it really depends on what you're using Office for. I think that they pick and chose exactly what features. It's funny the feature list that they chose to exclude because they're so spread across the board, it doesn't just affect one type of user, if that makes sense.
They gave everyone some pain. Yeah,
so I think it's a smart move, I guess, in terms of wanting people to subscribe, but it's kind of a sneaky move too.
What I heard, and I don't know if this is true or not, but what I heard is that they want to make it open enough that everyone, it's almost like how people used to pirate Photoshop, and it was okay because at least they were learning Photoshop. That Microsoft wants to make sure that a bunch of people at home are using Office because they still want to sell those lucrative business licenses.
Yeah, and I think for basic use, it'll be okay, but I think that there's going to be minor annoyances. It's just going to depend whether or not those minor annoyances are actually going to convince you to subscribe.
Or abandon them for something else.
Yeah, pretty much. And nowadays, I mean, we kind of have the freedom to go a la carte, so I've done that in the past where I've used Keynote for presentations. I like Office for, word processing and for spreadsheets. I don't really do anything too advanced that Google can't do. I care more about the collaboration features, and we use it a lot for Mobile Nations. So I think nowadays a lot of people are using them a la carte and just kind of picking the best out of each.
Since they're free. Yeah, I think we spoke about that a little bit on Monday. iOS is incredibly lucky in that we have all of them. We have Apple stuff and Google stuff and Microsoft stuff, and nobody else really has that.
No, they don't.
Platform lock-in advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So what I do is I use Keynote for presentations. I tend to use Numbers for my personal stuff because it's so easy to use. But we use Google spreadsheets for a lot of site planning stuff. And I refuse to use any word processor other than BBEdit or InDesign. I don't believe that you can exist in between. It's like Word is like Schrodinger's word processor for me.
Yeah, I'm pretty much about the same.
Yeah, I agree. Since I started using BBEdit like 4 or 5 years ago when I started working at Macworld, I have not gone back to working in a regular word processor with the exception of like having to do specific ebook format stuff in it. It just doesn't make sense to me. I'm like, I would much rather write in completely plain text and then mark up as according depending on where I'm putting it, which in 90% of cases right now, my text goes immediately to the web. So I don't really need to like bold or put images here because I'm just going to do it via HTML later.
Yeah, I always found Word it gives you some control, but and my background was in desktop publishing, so I immediately want full control, and it won't do that. So I need something like InDesign. So I want either all or nothing. I want to be able to control you down to the point, or I want to have no control whatsoever. There's no happy middle ground, at least not for me, Allie.
Yeah, I have yet to jump on the BBEdit bandwagon. I use Byword because mainly all I ever need something like that for is writing for iMore. So when it handles Markdown well, I can do everything I need to do, and I just haven't, I guess, felt the need to jump to that bandwagon yet. You guys apparently are a lot more advanced than I am.
No, I use maybe half of 1% of the features that Rich Siegel has jam-packed into that monster.
Oh yeah, the thing that I'm actually using BBEdit for, I really could probably be better off just using Text Wrangler. Yeah. But it's just, but I like it, and I like supporting Rich.
I want to give him money, yeah. So, but I guess one of the things that it comes down to is that though you can pick and choose, they all sync somewhat differently, and it's not like you have to export and import like an animal to get your stuff around. So like iCloud syncs my Keynote stuff, Google Docs it lives online basically, and Microsoft I don't know if they're using OneDrive or 360 or both for their sync. Yeah, but it's just. You're not just buying 3 hours, I guess, getting them for free, but you're also becoming entangled into 3 different sync solutions.
Yeah, I mean Microsoft Office does support Dropbox integration, so if your files kind of live and breathe there, they do give you that option, but I haven't really found it sounds bad being tangled between iCloud and Google Docs to really be that big of a deal because it depends on what app I launch. So as long as it's all there, I don't really care who has it. Maybe that's bad. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it might be bad if servers start mysteriously going down. But yeah, I hear you.
My documents strewn across the mountainside. The other thing is I wasn't sure about this, Allie, because Apple introduced with iOS 8 third-party storage providers that basically get the same privileges that iCloud got on iOS devices. So I don't know if Dropbox and OneDrive will be a moot point eventually when they finally get their act together and provide full rewrite access via the storage provider. We should be able to use them in any app we want to.
Yeah, and that's true. And I've noticed a lot of apps now you can kind of intermix, even if you're in Pages or Numbers, you can share a spreadsheet or a document to another app that supports it. So they're kind of starting to work pretty cohesively at this point to where it doesn't really matter too much.
So what are your recommendations? If people are coming to you and asking, Allie, what should I use?
I think if collaboration and a lot of the stuff that we do on a regular basis, such as sharing spreadsheets, sharing ideas, if you need to share with a large group of people and your needs are basic, Google's great. If you need those advanced features or you're in an enterprise environment or you're already using Microsoft Office, that's a great option. It transfers really nicely to a touch interface. If you're just getting started with maybe using spreadsheets, documents, or your needs are very minimal, but you want something that's easy to use and you can kind of grow with, I really like iWork. I like Pages, Keynote, and Numbers because they're easy to use, but the features are there. It's almost, I feel like iWork is very interactive. So what type of content you're interacting with depends on how the menus function. And to me, that makes it a better user experience because it kind of tailors to what you're doing. So it makes it easier than digging through menus like you kind of have to in Microsoft Office and some of the other suites.
Yeah, we talk about BBEdit and not using 1% of it. The thing that I really like about BBEdit is that you there's a lot of menus there, but you don't have to dive into them if you don't want to. And the same I think is true with iWork, where especially with its dynamic resize or dynamic text choosing, so it kind of figures out what you want and only shows the proper menus. Like, that's really, really awesome, and it takes away a lot of the panic of like, oh god, there's so many options.
Mm-hmm.
Curtis Boyle in our QA just pointed out also that if you do sign up for Office 360, you get quote-unquote unlimited OneDrive storage, which might appeal to some people.
Yeah, for document storage, I don't know how big of an appeal that is to me. I mean, I don't know, does anyone know if that actually transfers to all files or just...
I think it's everything. I don't think it's just Office docs. I would be throwing animated GIFs inside those Word files and saving them just to test that, though.
Just to say, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can double check that. But I mean, it is interesting because Apple did improve their pricing for iCloud Drive, but it's still not fantastic. Dropbox has gotten much better. Google is typically been good, and Microsoft is so interesting. And we've talked about it a lot. It's just they're willing to bend over backwards right now just to keep you on their software, and they're giving away tons of OneDrive stuff, giving away tons of features. And I guess it could be valuable for people who are just starting and want to get their foot in the giant online storage door. Microsoft. Yeah. But again, this is an embarrassment of riches. On some platforms, I don't want to be mean to Windows Phone, but I mean, they don't have Google stuff. They don't have iWork, of course. They don't even have Office yet. Microsoft I think they're promising it now for Windows 10 next year, and that's appalling. You'd be hard pressed to find anything, and here we're worried because we have too many things to pick from. I mean, it's a really nice problem to have.
I would agree. I would rather have too much software to choose from than not have any options or have subpar options. So first world problems. Yeah,
first world problems indeed. Otherworldly problems, or not problems, otherworldly awesomeness. We have Space Age. Space Age has come out, Ren. It is. I beta tested it early on, and I think you did too.
I did, and I got through half of the game when I was beta testing and put it aside in part because I was in the process of moving jobs, and also just I was like, I don't want to spoil myself. This game is too good. But I really for one thing, I love the incident when it came back out, when it came out in 2009. The incident, for people who've never played it, is the little sort of run away from the falling things as they try and fall on your head, and the falling things happen to be really strange objects.
It's Nevin Mergen from Panic and all his 8-bit glory.
Yes, Nevin Mergen and Matt Comey, who's a developer from Australia, and Cable Sasser doing the music, and those three put together are a powerhouse team. I've been hearing about Space Age since pretty much early 2010, I want to say, and I'm so excited to actually see it appear on fully formed and out for the masses. It's a great it's a great little puzzle game. It's hard to really describe what Space Age is. It's basically like a cross between an old LucasArts game and all of the old I think about it actually very similarly to how I feel about Earthbound, except there's also cooperative you have to control multiple people at once, and it's like everything that brings me joy as a fun, slightly eerie exploration game, and it's about space, so you get that on top of everything else. And I'm trying to be very, very vague because I don't want to give anything away about this game, because the writing is excellent, the story is very fun, it takes you on sort of a meandering, exciting journey, and if you're obsessive, the game works very well with uncovering certain parts of the map as you explore. So if you're like me and you're obsessive about finding everything on the map, there's lots of options for you to do that. There's special achievements you can get for finding specific things or accomplishing certain parameters within the subset of a chapter. It's a really, really fun little game for, I think, what is it, $5?
Yeah, I mean, people are going to complain because, oh my God, people are actually charging money for a game. But
oh no,
this is so. Yeah, I don't want to get all Christopher Nolan here, but we get the App Store we deserve, and if you want a really great App Store, you've got to support it with actual money, not just entitlement.
Well, exactly. It's I'm sorry. People put hard work into this game. People put hours, months, years of blood, sweat, and tears into this, and even though it's a small company, they're giving up their time. They all have day jobs and they're building this around. So I feel like it's very much worthwhile. It's not even $5. It's $4.
$4.
$4 for hours of entertainment. That's like
English, and I spoke to Nevin and Matt. One of the early episodes of Debug, and we never released it because we were waiting. We thought the game was imminent. It took them a while to get the game finished, but I was listening back to it, and just the way they describe how they developed the, I don't want to call it artificial intelligence because that always reminds me of the Terminator, but sort of the decision system. And wrote quite a lot about it at the time. And the sound, like Cable's music is fantastic, but the sound design is also
soundscape
terrific.
Is fantastic. And they made a very conscious choice to go with the old school, just scrolling dialogue as opposed to voiceovers. And I think it was an absolutely wonderful decision because real people's voices on Pixels feel a little odd. But they include so many different kinds of sounds, including a very well placed Wilhelm scream that makes me so happy inside. It's a completely well designed game, like top to bottom. And there are little tweaks that annoy me in terms of like the movement mechanisms. I occasionally would tap someplace and then my character would try and go the long way around to someplace. Yeah. I'm like, no, you're gonna alert everybody. But I love what they've done. And also, for people who haven't played it yet or are in the process of playing, if you have an Apple TV, I highly recommend mirroring because it's a really, really fun way to play this game. Those pixel art graphics, they may be 8-bit, but blow them up on a big screen television, and you will feel very happy inside.
Yeah, it is absolutely terrific. I recommend everybody go try it, and we'll try to get some more out of them on a future episode of Debug because they're a smart combo. They're, like you said, a power team.
They are, yeah, and I'll probably write my official review of it later. Hopefully it'll go up later today or first thing tomorrow. So
awesome.
Yeah. In the meantime, check out Space Age. Those of you who are listening, it's fun, and you wear it with headphones.
Do it, yeah. Or put it on your big sound system, your grown-up sound system. Craig is correcting me. There is the really bad version of Office on Windows Phone. They're just not updating it until Windows 10. But I believe there's still no touch Windows for Windows proper. Sorry, touch Office for Windows proper. Anyway, it's a bag of hurt no matter how you try to make it. Unforgivable, Microsoft. Dead to me. Not really, but that's how I feel. All right, so moving along, we're going to stick with the games for a bit because I was just talking a little bit about Space Age, and some people were saying, it's an actual game you have to pay for. Monument Valley put out its expansion pack, 8 more. They're not at really new levels. They're almost like new material to explore. It's not a secondary story. It's appendixes, almost in a Tolkien sense of the word. But it was $2 extra. Now, part of this wasn't their fault. Part of this was a limitation with IAPs. So some family sharing people got irked from it. But Ren, there were so many people so angry that they had to pay $2 whole more for 8 whole more levels. It really saddened me again.
It drives me so crazy. Like, I want to say, because you were mentioning it's like, they're not technically new levels. Like, they're putting in brand new work on this. It's not just like, we repurposed some mechanics from the old game and reskinned it. And we're just going to sort of eke out some more money from you. There are entirely new game mechanics in several of those levels. There are emotional mechanics that put your heart in your chest and you're like, oh, what? I cared for that. Spoiler. But it may not necessarily change the original Monument Valley story, which I actually like. Yes. I feel like at first I felt kind of gypped because I was like, oh man, I want more of the story. And then halfway through playing the appendices, which can be played in any order, which I thought was really cool. There's you pop up there's a little spectral ghost that gives you plot snippets in the original game, and the spectral appears midway through you playing the appendices and is like, oh, silly princess, have you lost your memory again? Which drops a hint about finishing all the appendices will get you a special treat. But the way that they framed that, where they're basically like, yeah, we're nodding and winking to the audience, basically saying, no, this isn't a prequel, this isn't a sequel. It just it takes place somewhere in the middle of Monument Valley, the original, or after Monument Valley ends, there's a possibility that time gets wound back down. And as soon as all of the appendices are finished, the princess can go back on her main path into Monument Valley. And I'm trying to like frame this without being too spoilery, because I really don't want to spoil the narrative of the original game. But yeah, I mean, they're fantastic, original, great pieces of content, which is like, I'd pay $2 per appendix.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, they did. So there was a couple things. Some people were disappointed with the original running length of Monument Valley. Although I would argue that I forget the original price. It was $4 or $5. You got at least as much, if not significantly more, entertainment from that than you'd get for a movie that costs $10 or $12 for now.
Absolutely.
And they made more work, so you give them more money. That's how our economy works. If you buy a hamburger yesterday, you still got to pay for a hamburger today. If you watch Star Wars yesterday, you still got to pay to watch Empire Strikes Back. That is what incentivizes them to go and do more. If they're not going to get paid for doing anything more, they're probably not going to do any more work on it. They'll go make a second game or a second app, and you'll have to buy that all over again. And the thing that you loved will get neglected. And that's one of the ongoing issues with the App Store, is that people question whether you can have sustainable businesses there. And we saw, Brent Simmons get a day job at Omni because, Vesper by itself was not enough to sustain that core team of 3 people. And we've seen this over and over again. We've seen, where's Tweetbot for iPad? I haven't heard anything official, but my guess is when you combine Twitter token restrictions with the lower amount of people who actually use an iPhone app, with people who complain that they have to pay for updates, with people who complain they have to pay for universal versions, it's just not economically viable for tab bots who want to feed their families, to put their work into that. And we can't have it both ways. We can't complain that we're not getting stuff and complain that we don't want to pay for stuff. Or, I mean, we can, but then ultimately we have ourselves to blame.
We can, but we're just going to end up complaining.
I want someone to perform a study to see if these people are the same people that pay 99 cents for another life in Candy Crush because they can't wait 20 minutes. And I bet they are.
They are, for sure.
I mean, just the way that people look at things, I think it's perspective, and I also think it's what classifies a free upgrade and what classifies, like you said, like the length of a movie. When we went on a flight that was a 4.5-hour flight a couple months ago, Heather, my girlfriend, asked me, what game should I download to entertain me on my iPad? And I said Monument Valley. And it kept her occupied. She finished the game about 10 minutes before we landed. So, I mean, you're talking 4.5 hours for $5.
Video games are not a girlfriend babysitter, Allie. You can't just plunk her down in front of the iPad and expect her to stay quiet.
Yeah. Can she?
Can I did. So, and I have not told her that there is an expansion yet, or maybe I did, but that'll be like another 4 hours I can get things done. So, but I mean, I think it's perspective, and it's what is classified as what should be. I mean, I would expect bug fixes and crashes and things like that. That's something a good developer just does. But I mean, when you're adding content, I expect to get paid for showing up to work every day. I write a how-to every day, but iMore pays me to write a how-to every day. So it's the same concept. You don't want to go to work and not get paid, even if you're doing the same thing the next day. So it's something to do with, I think, how people perceive. I don't know if they think apps are like this magical thing that like a unicorn just drops off on a bundle and no one spends time, but people show up to work or they work from home to create these things. And, if you want them, you have to pay for them because that's how they make an income. So I don't know what people's logic is when it comes to not paying for apps. I mean, you pay $60, $70 for what, a PlayStation 4 or a Xbox One game. It's the same concept. It's just a different platform.
So I have this theory, and it's a long-standing theory of mine that it's a triple problem, and that we're to blame, developers are to blame, and Apple's to blame. That's all. We are the sum of all of our compromises, and it kind of, I think my theory is kind of like this. When the App Store was introduced, people tried doing $10 apps, and they were successful for a while, but developers at some point decided that the cheaper they made their app, the more people would buy it. There was this race to the bottom, or they would do sales. And we learned that if we waited for the sale or we waited for the price drop, we could get the app cheaper. So we stopped buying apps at full price. Apple also never enabled trials, and we're risk adverse. When there's on the desktop, there was never that much software. Yes, it was expensive, but there wasn't a million different apps and the potential to spend, $30 times a million. Where on the App Store, there are millions of apps, and people are looking at them almost like pop apps or like snackable software, and they might want to get 10 apps in a day, and if each app is $10, they can't do that. So they become more risk adverse, and they don't want to buy something unless they're sure. And developers try to overcome that again by making things cheap, because maybe they're willing to spend $1 even if they're not sure. And that ultimately leads you down to free plus in-app purchase, because then you can get it and try it. And then what will people pay for? We said we won't pay to remove ads, so that didn't work for developers. We won't pay for additional levels. We just complained about that. But we will pay to get our car back on the track faster, to get our farm better than the kid down the street. Those are the things that we told them that we would pay for. So as long as Apple doesn't allow for upgrades or demos, as long as developers are willing, at least some of them, to race to the bottom, as long as we as customers tell them that we don't value deep, sophisticated, sustainable software, but would just like really cheap stuff, and we're willing to pay mostly just to stop being bored or to fulfill our ego, we get, again, the environment that we deserve.
Well, I mean, I know Android, I don't know about Windows Phone or BlackBerry, but I know Android allows trials. So you can actually download something, and then I think you can uninstall it in a certain amount of time, and then you're not charged for it, something like that. It would be interesting to see if the dynamic is different there, like how many people actually. Yeah, so I mean that's the thing. Like,
and some people argue that there's no innovation on iOS because Apple is so restrictive with App Store guidelines, but there's no greater innovation on Android either. So whatever Apple's doing wrong, no one else is taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, I'm sure Apple pays attention to, metrics involving whether people that are using trials on Android actually end up buying full versions. I mean, is it even worth it is that really going to solve the problem? I have a tendency to say no.
Yeah, there were trials traditionally in software, and some people were using them, especially. So another challenge that you have on iOS is that you're servicing many communities. On the Mac, people who came to iOS from OS 10, they understood shareware and did demos and being able to download from a website and try it out before you buy. People who came from other platforms like Trio, it was $30 for a yellow sticky note app. If you were lucky, and it would crash all the time, but it was still $30. And then you have people who were gamers who were used to buying cartridges, and you have all these different audiences all coalescing in one place. And again, my mom buys apps now. My mom never bought apps, for a computer. My dad always worked in enterprise. The apps were just kind of supplied for you, but it was very few apps you bought on your own, especially on your own dime. And we have now, again, millions and millions of apps, all snackably priced. It's sort of maybe like the same problem music is facing. And I don't know that anyone has presented a solution yet. I do know that if Taylor Swift made apps, she would have pulled them off the streaming app store already.
What did they say? If she would have just left her music alone, she would have made $6 million by now.
Yeah, she refuted that. Yeah, her record company refuted that. They said that she'd made, I think, several $100,000 and didn't foresee that changing.
Oh.
But her thing wasn't just the money; it was the relationship and I understand this. Like when you have subscriptions and when you have things like freemium, you're telling people that what you create has no value. And when you tell people it has no value, it makes it really hard to charge for it later. You can't unring that bell. And we've basically, with iOS and the App Store, we've told developers we don't value stuff anymore. And again, Pixelmator, and there was some follow-up. Justin Fowler, by the way, told us that it does work with handoff. So yay. But they're selling that for $5, and that, to me, that should be a $10 or $15 app.
Absolutely.
So we're saying we don't value apps, and they're reducing apps to a price that makes them not valuable. And you either fight against that the way Panic has done with some of their apps, or the way the Omni Group does, and you rage against the dying of the light, or I don't know. And some people yesterday, was interesting on Twitter. They were saying that it was the fault. It wasn't really the fault of Monument Valley, but they could have chosen a different business model. They could have released it as a second app. In which case people might have complained, but at least it was a second app. Or they could have had in-app purchase for something or other, and basically you have to fit the model. But I don't know how far you can fit that model until it becomes a perversion.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a problem no one solved, and I don't think it's one solution, because there's different, like you said, there's different genres of app buyers that you're catering to, gamers, whoever else. So it might not be one solution, it might be multiple solutions.
Yeah, and I mean, it also depends on who you're targeting, right? Because
Mhm.
I mean, we've talked about Panic and Omni. They have been able to make a sustainable business off the App Store by charging reasonable rates by specifically targeting the pro level users who are going to buy that. And actually that's why I was shocked that Pixelmator came in so low.
Mhm.
I mean, on one hand, they got demoed. They got demoed on the stage. You would think that would be the perfect time to be like, yeah, you see this beautiful thing where we made a goat disappear in 5 seconds. You got to pay $20 for that. Suck it.
Yep. And then you could kill goats all day long.
Yep, exactly.
And part of the problem has always been that, Microsoft is giving away Office for free on mobile. Apple's giving away iWork and iLife for free on mobile. Google's always given away everything for free. And when you have companies whose businesses isn't software, Apple's subsidized by hardware margins, Microsoft is subsidized by business services, Google subsidized by advertising, they can afford to do it. But the independent developers who might have an amazing app inside them, they don't have that luxury. It's sort of on the same scale of what happened to Palm in smartphones. Palm had no other business, and they ran out of money to make smartphones. Samsung could just funnel refrigerator money into that. Apple could use Mac money in the beginning. Microsoft can throw Office and Windows money at it, and it makes a very different landscape. And I do lament, as a customer, I want amazing apps. I remember as a kid, VisiCalc on the Apple was transformative, and then things like Quark Express on the Mac and things like Office on the PC were amazing. And I don't know if we're getting those on iOS now.
I don't know if I feel like the problem is, I think it's a combination of how developers approach different groups, like we talked about, and what Apple's doing to kind of help them target those markets. I don't know. I mean, you can't really compare the App Store to the Android marketplace and BlackBerry and the others because they're all different. They have different user bases and they have different preferences. And I don't know if it's the set of tools that Apple's providing in terms of marketing and selling an app that needs to be fixed, or how developers approach it, or both. So
Yeah, it's also where is your interest aligned? Like Apple has its own interest. Like it wants to make their customers really happy, but maybe they don't believe that having really deep, really sophisticated apps is what's going to make their customers happy. Maybe they believe that having pop apps and snackable apps make their customers happy because it increases the total value of the iPhone. Sure, the iPhone costs $200 on contract or $600 off contract, but once you get it, you have tons and tons of almost free software, and that instead of having to buy that software is almost free, and that means that the money you put towards the iPhone, it really goes further than you think it does. And that, that is where their interests might be aligned. And Google's interest has always been aligned that way. We'll give you everything for free as long as you give us your attention and your data in exchange. And it just seems like we're running out of room for the alternatives, and things that could have helped pave the way for a sustainable, almost premium app store are getting thinner and thinner.
I would agree.
Yep.
I don't want to, but I agree.
I just hope there are people who are willing to, keep on fighting the good fight, and maybe Apple can actually pay attention and be like, hey, we're going to remember how we used to be an advocate for professional apps? Maybe we should do that again. Maybe.
I feel like there comes a point where you spread yourself too thin, too. And I feel like Apple's getting into too many different... that's a whole different conversation, but just many different companies are doing that. You can't do everything well. Sometimes you have to do a couple things exceptionally well. And I feel like, Apple's releasing tips apps, and they're doing a lot of other things that I don't necessarily know. I would have rather had that time spent getting bugs out of iOS 8. So, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes companies spread themselves too thin, and then it results in subpar products where I would rather support indie developers and smaller developers that spend time doing something exceptionally well.
Yeah, it's a tough problem to solve. Like, does Apple make Craig Hockenberry, I think 6 years ago, talked about having a premium app store where you'd go in there and you could go into the flea market, so to speak, or you could go into the boutique, and the boutique would have $10, $20 apps, and they'd be really well done, highly polished, and they would cost real money, but they would be fantastic experiences. Almost like, we did start seeing those kinds of apps like GarageBand from Apple and iMovie from Apple are terrific. They're free now, and it's hard to compete against those. But if you created an environment where you didn't have to go up against the free apps, maybe that would help. It'd be nice if one of Apple's competitors had figured this out too, because at least then you could point at them, but certainly Google Play isn't doing anything better, and neither is the Windows Marketplace and BlackBerry App World, whatever. It's I hate complaining when I don't have a solution, but I do not have a solution to this.
Yeah.
I just have complaints.
So many complaints.
All right, next topic. Staples has rolled out Apple Pay support to 1,400 stores, and I mostly put this in just because I like that Apple Pay is expanding at what looks like a fair clip.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. I mean, I don't shop at Staples, but I know plenty of people who do.
We don't have a Staples.
You don't have a Staples? How do you buy your staples?
We have an Office Max.
We have a wonderful thing called an Amazon.
Yeah, pretty much. That's about what I have.
So the interesting thing to me here, though, is that the U.S. is curious because you have Apple Pay, but you don't have high NFC penetration. So it is more of an effort to upgrade all of this stuff, but we're seeing more and more retailers sort of roll it out. I don't know what a critical mass is for Apple Pay, though. Is it one of those things where everyone tries it, and after you've tried it a couple times, the novelty's worn off? But it looks to me like people are trying it, and it's so easy that they want to do it more. That it's actually one of those technologies where it's not addictive, because that sounds like too strong a word. But the experience is so good that doing it just makes you want to use more and more of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I found at this point, I go looking for the terminals. Anything that has a chip and pin, I immediately pull out the phone and try that first. I was actually really sad because I broke my phone the other day because I'm a stupid person.
What did you do, Serenity?
I got out of my car and it fell out of my winter coat, which was half zipped. So there's no.
Wait, your pocket had an option for a zipper?
Yeah, it was half zipped. It was like there was this much room for the phone to fall out, and it fell.
Did it bend?
Did not bend. Although I did have a crazy dream last night about my phone slowly bending into liquid, which was kind of weird. I think it just goes into my fears of destroying my phone.
You were watching the iPhone 5S commercial again.
Yeah, you'll notice that this is now encased because I have succumbed to the scariness of having this thing slip out of my hands. But anyway, while I was waiting for it to get fixed, I went to a Lucky Brand and I saw that they had an Apple Pay, a terminal there, and I'm like, do you know if that accepts Apple Pay? And she's like, I don't, but I've seen people wave their phones at it before. And I'm like, darn it, my phone is getting fixed, otherwise I would try this. But it's exciting.
I've noticed something interesting with Apple Pay. Some NFC terminals, even though they work, they don't, I went to AT&T. I had to, actually, I'm sure our AT&T store here hates me because I frequently use them as an experiment for iMore. And to do a how to refund Apple Pay how-tos, I went there and said, I'm going to buy something and return it with Apple Pay. And they're like, okay. They just don't even ask questions anymore. But apparently, if maybe some places have to be updated, because I've actually found places that it'll just decline it. So, I mean, I went through 4 cards and it just declined.
Yeah.
So it says it goes through, and then Apple Pay comes back 2 minutes later and says the transaction was declined. So
we had some people write in and tell us that they saw NFC it right and thought they'd try it again just in case it would work, and it was declined there too. So
yeah, I don't know if that's maybe merchants have to do some kind of software update on their end. I don't know.
Yeah.
The thing I was made me wonder about it though is, I was talking about this the other day. The iPhone came out, and the original iPhone was super expensive, so it's hard to tell how much it would have driven adoption if it had been lower priced. But the iPhone 3G came out. It was started at, relatively inexpensively, $200, but it also had the App Store for the first time. So people could do Facebook, they could do Twitter, they could do all of these things. They could do these activities that made the experience better than it did by itself. Yeah, having an iPhone was neat, but having the ability to be connected to your virtual community everywhere at once is compelling. And I think when you start adding these convenience features in, being able to pay with your phone wherever you go, that's also a compelling experience. And the numbers that we saw, I think it was 1% of Whole Foods already. And that's
17 days?
Yeah, and it's only people with iPhone 6 and 6 Plus in the U.S. who can use it, which is not people are saying, well, there's tens of millions. There's not tens of millions of them in the U.S. that people are using for that. That to me was really encouraging. That to me feels like a technology that is virtuous, that makes you want to use the technology more and the device that enables it.
For sure. I'm really excited to see that. Again, 1% of payments is not a lot, but at the same time, for something that's only been in existence for 17 days, that's pretty exciting, especially when you consider how technology adverse a lot of people are to trying new things that they're used to, over and over in their daily commute and their daily life.
Well, and you also have to consider how many places don't take it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I've found Meijer, our grocery store, accepts Apple Pay. So every time I go grocery shopping more often now, so I can use Apple Pay. Not really, but I get really excited when I go to Meijer. I'm like, oh, I can pay with my phone here. So that's the only place I've even found that allows me to pay for it with Apple Pay.
No, it is absolutely terrific. I put this in the show notes. It's super geeky, but I wanted to mention it. AnandTech, Ryan at AnandTech is continuing his deep dive into all things feeds and speeds when it comes to the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus. And Chipworks finally did their for the iPad Air 2. And Chipworks finally did their die shot of it. And it turned out that the A8X chipset in the iPad Air 2 was even crazier and cooler than AnandTech and other people had suspected, because Apple did not use an off-the-shelf part. Typically, they take an Imagination's Power VR chip, and they were using Power VR Rogue, I think, most recently, and putting it in there. But so AnandTech just assumed it was a 6-core Power VR chip that Power VR had announced previously. Turns out it's an 8-core chip that has never been released by Power VR. Apple basically took the spec, the design that Power VR made, similar to how they take the ARM design for ARM V8 to make the CPU, and they made their own GPU. And there's a couple theories about why they did this. Like they might have needed to reach that size, and so they decided to add the cores to it. But that Apple hired a bunch of GPU engineers from AMD a while ago, and they've been doing a lot of work on that. And it looks like we're finally getting to see that. And it brings back that old thought of mine, Ren, which is still, some people have poo-pooed this idea, but to me it's still impressive that you have Apple, which is not a chip company. I mean, they are now, but Apple is not historically a chip company, leading the way in mobile processors ahead of Intel, ahead of Qualcomm, ahead of Samsung, all of which can actually fabricate their own chips.
Yeah, it's really impressive to me, actually, the amount of hardware that Apple has really sunk into to building these kind of things. I mean, Apple traditionally has relied on other people for their chipsets, but at a certain point, I mean, for one thing, they're making some of the best ARM chips in the business right now, which is kind of crazy. They're making 64-bit chips. They're making chips that are thinner and smaller and fit into lighter devices than ever before. And by making their own chips, it means that they can play with the specifications of their device to a bit more than they would be if they were working with outside partners. Also, it takes away the problem of like, oh yeah, if one part of Samsung is building our chips and another part of Samsung wants to kill us. So like conflicts.
Yeah, but I think that ability to design specifically is what's interesting, and I think it's not well understood. Like some people will say, "Oh, but this other processor, it's clocked higher." You don't want higher clocks on mobile because higher clocks come with higher heat. So what Apple's doing is going slow but wide. So the chips aren't clocked that fast, but it's just the bandwidth is so wide on those chips they can get a lot of stuff done, and that keeps it cool, but allows it to have super high performance. Mm-hmm. Or some people will say, "Oh, but they have 3 gigs of RAM for years already." But Apple doesn't need 3 gigs of RAM because iOS doesn't garbage collect, doesn't do a lot of other really intensive things that are required for software stacks like Java, and they can tune specifically for the 1 or 2 pieces of hardware they ship. They don't have to tune to support everybody's platform, and that I think to talk about your harmonies, your virtuous cycles, I think that is going to be more and more interesting as years go on.
For sure. I mean, we're already seeing it with the Apple Watch, right? I mean, something tells me that would have been very hard to build without having some chip independence.
The S1.
Yeah.
I can't wait till someone cracks that baby open.
Oh, I know.
All right, moving along. Serenity, you told us how to upload images to our iCloud library via the web.
Yeah. Actually, I have to give a shout out to Federico Battici because I saw him talking about it last night, and I was like, oh man, they've put up upload, and it turns out that iCloud Photo Library does in fact have an upload button in the web view, but you have to go to beta.icloud.com to use it. So you have to be willing to accept the fact that on top of this beta service that you're already using, that you've maybe already turned on, and you have to have it turned on to obviously upload things to it, you have to go to the beta.icloud.com site. But once you're in there, there is in fact a little upload text in the top right corner that's next to the select photos button. And when you click it, you just get a regular old file uploader, and you can just drop any JPEG image that you want. It's only JPEGs, so no PNGs right now, no movies. You can upload those via your iOS device, so as long as you get it onto your iOS device first, that's an option. The one problem, and this is the thing that continues to bug me as the iCloud photo library picture evolves, is that when you upload images to iCloud photo library, you are actually uploading images to your camera roll in your various devices. So when I was like, I dumped something like 900 images into iCloud photo library, and that took a while, by the way. Also, the uploader does not like more than 200 images at a time. It really gets cranky. But once I uploaded, the 900 or so that transferred, and I went to use my phone, I was going to upload something from Instagram that I had taken yesterday, and all of a sudden there were 900 pictures from March in between the photo I had taken yesterday and the screenshots, and I was like, okay. So like things that I would love to see Apple's iCloud photo library solve in the next couple months before the Mac client comes out is like, hey, this fantastic thing called selective sync that Dropbox does? How do you feel about maybe, A, just dumping it into our library and not necessarily our camera roll, and B, maybe they don't get automatically downloaded to your phone unless you tap like a download button. Maybe they can just exist in a cloud so you can preview them but not actually like have them pulled.
The question I had is why would someone upload using iCloud.com? I mean, is it iCloud library not going to pull what's already in iPhoto, or is this for stuff that maybe you just had lying around in your hard? Like, what's the use case for this?
Correct. So iPhoto right now does not pull to iCloud photo library at all. You've got your photo stream, which sort of still exists independently. But when it comes to your actual iCloud photo library, the canonical source, it's currently only pulling photos that you take on devices, iOS devices that you've opted in to iCloud photo library. So for instance, I've got it on my iPhone 6 and my iPod Air 2. So any photos that I take on either of those devices will go to iCloud photo library, but no other photos will go there unless I specifically upload them to my iPhone. So like I use the Lightning camera adapter, or I transfer photos via AirDrop, or I use this new upload tool. So the upload tool is kind of a way for people, while they wait for the new Photos app to become available, that's one way that they can get their photos into iCloud photo library. There are a couple others too that I talked about, like different ways to sort of like hack your Mac's photos into iCloud photo library, including like AirDrop or iCloud shared photo streams.
I just shared photo streams to myself because that was way easier than trying to.
So much easier.
I don't understand, why couldn't Apple have just made, because technically iCloud photo library is part of iCloud Drive.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they have had a repository folder for iCloud photo library in iCloud Drive? Like,
yeah, you do it in Dropbox carousel style.
Yeah, so I don't know. And it's confusing because if you have devices that you don't have iCloud photo library turned on, you get the traditional camera roll photo stream. So what I don't understand, and maybe one of you knows the answer to this, is how do I know right now, looking at my phone, what are actually on my device and what are just being streamed from iCloud photo library? Because some of my photos, I notice I click on them, they're grainy, and then all of a sudden they become clear. So I can tell that like something's happening. Like I can see the little spinny thing at the top. I know that it's downloading data. I have selected download and keep originals, but I can still tell that it's not, like even older videos, like it takes a minute to load them, even if I have download and store originals.
Yeah, on files that aren't downloaded, you'll see like a little timer ticking in the lower right-hand corner as it downloads. But at the same time, I'm not sure if those photos are now downloaded permanently or downloaded or temporarily streamed, or
That's my problem, because if people want to free up storage space by having photos in iCloud photo library, not letting them know what photos are actually downloaded and what, besides, I don't know, maybe in documents and data or somewhere in settings you can clear that cache like you can with iTunes Match. But it's just not, it doesn't seem very intuitive to me as far as sorting and knowing what's on board and what's not.
My understanding is that they don't want us messing with it, that their plan is that it's going to be basically nearline storage where the photos that are most recent and most often accessed are kept as a cache on your device and the other ones are all kept online, and that there's a certain amount that they will take if there's available storage, and then if there's not available storage, they'll just wipe part of that cache away.
Yeah, but that you run into the same problem that you run with iTunes Match, whereas
Exactly.
if you want certain photos on your device, let's say I'm going on a trip where I'm not going to have internet access and I want to show mom and dad the new baby or something like that. Like those photos, you need to be able to say I want to save that. And currently the only way to do that is by tapping the little favorites button. But in that case, then you're clogging favorites, which a bunch of other things. But there's no way to download
favorites.
I think if you move them to another album, it might download them permanently as well. No?
Moving to another album just creates an alias to it. It doesn't actually download the photo.
No, I tried it with videos. I tried to like make another album and put stuff in it, and it was still streaming.
Okay, we will investigate this. We will find answers to questions.
I want choices, damn it.
We'll send out Gandalf. He's good at that. The other iCloud Drive thing that you were troubleshooting, Ali, was a way to, because on the Mac you can just go to Finder and iCloud Drive is there and you can see everything that's in it, but not so on iOS. There's no iCloud Drive app the way there is a Photos app or a Passbook app or all the other repository app. So you tried to find us some workarounds?
I did. There was initially an app in the App Store called iCloud Explorer, and it was free, and that quickly got pulled. There is another one currently, and to my knowledge it has not been pulled, called iCloud Opener. It does the same thing. It's pretty much just a file explorer. So what you can do is you can, tap different files in your iCloud Drive, and it lets you either view them, and it supports quite a few different file types, or it brings up a dialog where you can open it in respective apps that support those file types. So it's kind of acts as a hub, which is what I would imagine iCloud Drive would act as, or like Dropbox acts as now, or any other cloud storage app. There's also a couple apps available in the App Store, just as like Documents 5. It's not maybe meant for that purpose, but it works for that purpose. So that or Goodreader. I prefer Documents 5 just because Goodreader scares me. The navigation just it's too much.
It's a little obtuse.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's like super feature packed, and the people that like it, they love it. Like that's like their go-to app.
It's the AK-47 of file explorers.
Yes, it's where like I feel like Documents 5 is like Pixelmator, and Goodreader 4 is Photoshop. So it just depends on, do you want a bunch of features and you don't mind a steep learning curve, or do you just want an iCloud Drive Explorer that is a great PDF management tool as well? So either way, a lot of those apps that manage PDF files, they'll work as iCloud Drive Explorers of some sorts as well. So I still want an iCloud Drive app, though.
Me too.
All the things.
Files.app, Apple, please. I've been begging every year for like 4 or 5 years.
Please. I know the file system is dead, but that doesn't mean that we can't still have nice things.
The repository system lives.
Yeah.
Ren, you looked at how to use iMovie to create slow motion videos.
I did. So that's a question I've been getting from a variety of sources since I made my iPhone 6 slow-mo video and I let slip that I made it all on the iPhone. And it's actually really easy with the new iMovie. The new iMovie is pretty darn cool because it actually offers detailed slow motion controls inside the app that are a lot more fun to use than the slow motion controls on Final Cut, let me tell you. I really like being able to like customize. It's basically almost like cutting up a clip like you would to edit it, except in this you're cutting up portions of a clip without actually cutting it. That just focus on the slow motion. So you get these little yellow edit handles that exist on top of a preset clip so that you can like be like, I want to slow this part down. And I want to add a freeze frame here when they're in the middle of the jump. And I want to speed it up as soon as they come out of the jump. It's really nifty. So I did a short video on how to use those controls, which seems to be going over pretty well. And then actually right after I did that video, like the day after or the day it came out, the Studio Neat guys came out with this second version of their Slow Fast Slow app, which is an app specifically dedicated to doing slow motion in videos. And I've only played around with that a little bit, but I really like that. That's a very good alternative. And it has, again, the thing that I really care about when it comes to editing video on an iPad or on an iPhone is really smart, intuitive touch controls that make it feel, at least to me as an editor, that it's quicker and easier for me to do it with my hands than it is doing shortcuts on a keyboard. And Slow Fast Slow is one of those apps that, because of the way that they're basically almost using nodes to do curves for slowing in and out. That kind of stuff I love, because I love tactile based editing. It makes me feel like I'm going back to my roots.
Can you add freeze frames in Slow Fast Slow?
I haven't been able to find that yet. You might. It's the 2.0.
That's one thing that I think is cool with iMovie is you can freeze stuff.
Yeah. I'm gonna find out.
One thing I like so much about apps like iMovie and GarageBand is there's this old user experience thing where people insist that using keyboard shortcuts is faster, and it really isn't. Like, there's been so many tests. Objectively, using a mouse is faster than using keyboard shortcuts. What they found out was the mouse, because of the way keyboard shortcuts work, you have to remember what they were because they're more abstract, and then push them. And that your brain broke up into two different things. And so it didn't feel like it was taking as long. There was a step 1 and a step 2, and because both of the steps were short, it felt like the overall thing was short, where the mouse thing felt like it took the entire thing because it was just one step. Where multi-touch, it is just one thing, and it's also a direct manipulation, so it feels even faster because you're getting instant feedback and instant response. What you touch and where you push goes exactly where you want it to do, and that makes an incredibly powerful experience. Like you said, Serenity, it's like those old days where you would use a scissors and cut that film and tape it together, and you're doing that all in this big finger painting environment. And I that's why I want those sophisticated apps on iOS, because there's some things that you can just do by getting your hands on them that feel so much more gratifying than any sort of abstracted interface.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying that. Same thing why I enjoy Pixelmator too. It's just the more artistic apps we can get where it's tactile over like tap, menu. And it's like, oh, I can pinch to reveal like zooming, or if I use 2 fingers and swirl, I can reverse. I'm just gonna talk about paper gestures because those are like really cool. So yeah, I'm really excited with those kind of things. It does not look like Slow Fast Slow does freeze frames.
But those Studio Neat guys are still neat.
Oh yeah, they're super awesome, and it's a
GILF. They do the Cosmonaut. They do a whole bunch of really cool stuff.
I can't wait to spam Rene with slow motion sheep videos.
Yes.
All right, we have a few questions. Let's get to them. One is from Ryan Saldana, and he wants to know, is the iPad mini Apple's cheap way to get into iOS development versus the iPod Touch? The iPod Touch's virtue is that you can develop for 4-inch iPhones as well, even though 4-inch iPhones are no longer the norm, and Apple really needs, if they want to keep that, a bigger size iPod Touch. But you can get into iPad development really easy with the original iPad. What is it at now? $249?
Yeah, something like that. It's as close as it's going to get to the iPod Touch, probably, which is pretty crazy.
It is absolutely dizzying what the prices have gone to. We had a couple more questions. I'll just pull them up. Here we go. This is from El Big Lamas. Why do I still need to input my 4-digit PIN in my debit card when buying with Apple Pay? Why is that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is, unfortunately, debit card regulations in the U.S. are fairly strict. And even though you do have Touch ID as an authentication method, I believe it has something to do with bank regulations. And using your debit card as a debit card versus swiping it as credit. It also has to do with the fact that retailers get charged certain fees if they're using it as credit, and when they see a debit card, unless you specifically enter it in as credit, they will try and run it as debit so that they can save themselves some of the fees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you pay the fees for debit, they pay the fees for credit.
Yep.
And I'm a jerk, but I always use credit for that reason. Jose Antelo wants to know, do you think Apple will make something similar to Chromecast, or will they update AirPlay? AirPlay keeps kicking me off when I use it.
That's actually, so I think that AirPlay is fine. I would check and see what you're AirPlaying to, because I had that problem when I had a version 2 Apple TV, like a slightly older Apple TV that I hadn't updated the firmware on. And especially I have an old Airport Express, like 2 versions ago, that gets really, really cranky if I try and AirPlay things to it for longer than like 2 hours. So I think it might have to do in part with outdated hardware and not knowing your situation. I can't diagnose it perfectly, but I don't think that the likelihood is very high that Apple's just going to make a tiny TV dongle unless they can figure out a way to fit the Apple TV into something that's small and avoid cables and wires. They do like making small things, so you never know.
Yeah, my biggest gripe with AirPlay is still trying to move photos, like things from the camera app, the Photos app over to the phone, the TV. And I get that AirPlay was like this weekend project where they just wanted to quickly hand off URLs, and it grew way beyond that. But it seems like it works really well when you have an internet source on your phone and that actual internet source gets transferred, and then the Apple TV pulls it directly from the internet, not streaming it from your device. When it wants to take photos and video from your device and stream it over, I don't know why it takes so long, but it seems like an interminably long time to get those streaming.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I think it probably has to do with protocols,
physics, and the laws of them.
Mm-hmm.
Kurt Matz wants to know, iPhone 5S rings and my mid-2010 MacBook Pro doesn't pick up the phone call anymore. Any thoughts on how to resolve always on the same Wi-Fi?
Mid-2010 MacBook Pro, I'm thinking, is not officially supported by continuity.
Yeah, so I think people are confused because originally in the early betas, more things were supported than they ended up being in the final release, and part of that was because they weren't reliable. And I don't know if I've heard rumors that Apple is very carefully constraining what Wi-Fi signals are used as well, and they're only using 5 gigahertz and a few other things on the Wi-Fi end. But basically it means if you don't have a 2012 Mac for a lot of things or later, they're hard or they don't work, I think is the harsh reality.
Yeah, I think SMS relay and calling are the only ones that don't rely on 2012 or later Mac.
Okay, so
I think that's a good rule of thumb. I think that's right.
Yeah, so in theory, that call relay should hypothetically work, but yeah, it might be a Wi-Fi signal. It might be a problem there.
I think it's essentially doing a FaceTime call, right? Like it gets the phone call in, then places a FaceTime call from your iPhone to your iPad, and then transits it between the two.
Some kind of hokey dokey magic.
Yeah, it's all unicorn things.
Yeah, do you have recommendations for troubleshooting, Allie? Something like that?
Yeah, we can. I think we did a guide on troubleshooting. Did he say the issue was specifically calling?
Call relay.
Yeah. I think we have a guide on that. We'll dig it up. Maybe, Rene, you want to put it in the show notes?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did a guide on that. A lot of the time, sometimes disabling it and re-enabling it on all the things will make it work. And for some reason, there's a little trick where if you change the names of devices, and then like your iOS devices specifically, and then reboot all the iOS things, that will work. I know Peter could not get handoff or continuity calling working at all, and the only thing that worked for him was he had to change the name of his devices. And I think after you do that, you can actually change them back, and it still works. So there's some little glitch there that's causing that to do something funny.
Yeah, Apple says all you need is an iOS device that supports iOS 8 and a Mac that supports Yosemite, and it should work. But it's transiting it over. You have to be in the same Wi-Fi network, and the quality of that Wi-Fi network and reliability is going to play into it.
Mm-hmm.
Ian Pam 7 wants to know, since updating to iOS 8.1, the battery life has been absolutely appalling. Won't even last a few hours. Why is this? There is a percentage of people, battery life like Wi-Fi, that whenever you upgrade, it just gets bad for some people. Like you always hear about Wi-Fi issues for some people, but not many. You always hear about battery life issues for some people, but not many. And I think it's just sometimes good bits go bad. And
I'm going to blame iCloud.
Well, I think, if it's not a usual culprit, like if you turn off a lot of things and it's still bad, like the test I always recommend is take your iPhone and put it down and don't touch it, but write down how much the percentage is, and then come back in half an hour, and look at it. And if that's gone down while nothing's been happening, then you have a problem. And you can try rebooting. You can try turning off and turning on notifications, turning off and turning on background refresh, getting rid of stuff you don't think you need. But if it's a consistent problem, you're going to want to reinstall. And if reinstalling doesn't work, you're going to maybe want to swap out your phone.
Anytime I've ever had issues with battery life that were substantial, you have to remember too that when you update to a new OS, typically you're on it a lot. So I don't think people realize their usage goes up. Like that's, I think, why Rene says write down, when you used it, or not when you used it, but set it down, see what it's at. If it's going down and you're not doing anything, I typically recommend a restore in iTunes, back up manually to iTunes, and then restore your phone brand new, and then restore from that backup. iTunes backups and iCloud backups are a little bit different with the way they handle files, and I found iTunes, while iCloud is very convenient, it's not as good as getting rid of parsed files and just junk and corrupt files as iTunes is. So they're a little bit more reliable, and anytime I've ever actually had legitimate battery issues after an iOS upgrade, an iTunes install 99.9% of the times will fix it.
Also, check your Apple now in iOS 8. They have the battery usage monitor, and while it can be tricky to decipher, if you see, for example, Google Hangout or Facebook is using 25 or 50% of your battery and you're not using them that often, then those apps have a problem, and you either want to force quit them or think about finding alternatives.
Yeah, I wish Apple would give, I think the battery usage it shows the last 24 hours, doesn't it?
There's a tab you can go over for longer.
Yeah, but they don't give you I wish there was an option between charge cycles. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Just so then you could see on one battery depletion what was eating your battery. So
But just remember again, it's out of 100, so they all have to add up to 100. So if it's if you're not using your phone at all, you're still going to see a lot of battery usage because they have to equal 100. It's one of the drawbacks. Ren, do you have anything you found help with battery life?
Yeah. Sorry, my microphone was off. My biggest thing is turning off auto brightness. I think that's huge and makes a lot of difference. Also, background location stuff will drain like crazy. Yeah,
my iPhone 6 Plus, I don't even plug it in every night anymore. Thing is ridiculous.
You have a magic thing. Actually, you know what? I don't plug in my iPhone 6 sometimes either, and I wait until the next when I'm sitting here at work to do it because it surprisingly, yeah, I've come at the end of the day and had 50% battery life left. I'm like, what is this magic? But yeah, also, if you're in a place with bad cell reception, I know a lot of my friends actually in Boston, they happen to work in these old buildings that have chicken wire in the walls. Mm-hmm. If you have bad cell reception, it's going to murder your battery life. Yes. Because the phone is constantly pinging, trying to I need the internet, I need to touch it. So turning it into airplane mode if you're in a building that does not work so much.
Yeah, that's huge because it's basically anything that radiates energy. So the screen and the radios are the biggest battery usage. So if you turn off auto brightness, and then when you are, whether it's in an airport or in any place that has a really low signal, if you just turn it off, those things will power right down, and you'll save tons of battery life. I'm going to get this name completely massacred, so I apologize. Adiel Gaforkan wants to know, has iCloud Photo Library been reliable for you guys? Uploads seem to go at random, sometimes requiring a restart or rejigger in settings. How have your experiences been?
It's I haven't had it crash on me yet, but that upload was a little wonky when I tried it yesterday, 2 days ago. And it definitely, again, the problems that we've talked about earlier, where it's clearly not full baked, and it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on.
Carl James wants to know, have you pitched Siri up against Amazon Echo? I can't imagine they'd be much different. Amazon, like almost 99% of their products, Echo is not available in Canada. I did watch the video of it. Basically, it's like Siri, but it sits in your house instead of on your phone, and you have to plug it in. Yet surprisingly, people in the video have it with them everywhere in the house. So either they plug it into some body outlet that they have with them, or a potato maybe, or they have a lot of them.
All right. Just hear me out, Rene.
Okay.
Echo Roomba.
Echo Roomba, nice. Allie's favorite.
Jacket. Yeah. Maybe we'll do that as not the Echo Roomba, but maybe we'll do a comparison where we'll just take both and have them head to head for a week and see what happens.
I feel about Amazon Echo the way I feel about Google, like Google Now, in that with Apple, the functionality is much less, but I don't have to give up as much to use it, where I feel like the services that Google Now and even Amazon Echo are going to provide me are going to cost me a lot more. Not in terms of money, but in terms of data and attention and just the way I want my electronic universe to exist. but I'd be happy for someone else to see if it takes their soul. That'd be fun.
Done.
Brian Ray James says he is not alone. He has a problem. Hold on, I'm checking what it is. He gave me a link. I'm going there. iTunes Radio disappear. Oh, this is the iTunes Radio disappearing stations question. This is a follow-up. So it looks like, yeah, so several people are having this. Their stations are disappearing, and I think our guess from last week still stands, and it's probably has to do with the normal craziness that is licensing deals. I have no other insight into this, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I'm guessing that.
Douglas Cragon wants to just give a cheer out to Netflix supporting the iPhone 6 Plus. Yay, Netflix. 1080p. Real 1080p on a smartphone. I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but Sharp was showing off a 726 dpi smartphone screen.
I did not see that.
It was like 2550 by 1600 in a 6-inch smartphone screen.
Oh my god.
I don't know if they're making it for hawk eyes or, I don't know who needs Retina at that scale, but bless their pixely hearts.
Yeah, I'm impressed.
All right, last question. Ron Heights. No, we did that already. I apologize. That is all of them. We have answered all
completed.
Yeah.
Hooray.
Bow, 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 bow. So if you want to send us a question, you can do it at any time on Twitter. Just hashtag it Ask iMore, one word, and we will pick it up. Or you can email podcast@imore.com. We are here to provide you with answers, so please do not hesitate to let us know. We are also here for you to enjoy live every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Thanksgiving, we're going to go a day early, though. We're going to go on Wednesday because apparently Allie, Peter, and Ren want to get their turkey on, and I don't want to get in the way of that.
Yeah, turkey and or Disneyland, Disney Worlding.
Is it Disney World Day in America? That's
Yes.
amazing.
I mean, at least if you're in Florida.
Nice. But otherwise, you can always find us then. And joining us live is the absolute best way to enjoy the show because you can ask us questions, you can interact with us, you can do all of these things that we just did for the last, hour and 15 odd minutes. Otherwise, you can find the show on YouTube. The video version is on YouTube. It's at youtube.com/iMoreVideos. We try to get it up there usually within a few hours of the show. And you can find the audio version on RSS or on iTunes. Just take a look, take a search for iMore. If you haven't already, please do go to iTunes. Please leave a review. Please leave a rating. It encourages the wonderful editors at iTunes to feature the show, and that encourages wonderful people like yourselves to find it. I'm getting speechless, guys. We've been hitting #1 in iTunes gadgets like week after week after week, and I'm humbled by it.
It's super exciting. Thanks for listening, guys. We appreciate it. And we're trying to fix the sound. Let us know if it's any better this week than previous weeks. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, the sound issue, because a couple people were asking about that. Google Hangouts was actually dropping out on us. We use Google Hangouts to record the show because it's actually a video show, and then we pull the audio from that. We might end up double enders and recording the audio and stuff separately. Google Hangouts, the audio plugin is so panicky and wants so much control of the system that a lot of other stuff is giving us a hard time to pull separate audio, but we're trying really hard. We got good microphones, we got good headsets, we got as much good stuff as we can. We want to make it sound great. So if you have any tips, just don't hesitate. Let us know. Allie, if people want to find you, if they want to see more of your awesome stuff, where can they go?
Every day at imore.com, and I am at iMuggle on all of the things.
What about you, Ren?
Also every day on iMore.com and various other places on the internet under Settern, Settern.
And if Peter Cohen couldn't make it here, it's National Kaiju Day or something in America, and he had to go demolish a small coastal city. But if he was here, he would tell you could find him at Flarg, Flargh. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find all of us at iMore. I want to thank our community for joining us. They're the absolute best, most handsome, most generous community on the whole interwebs, and we very much enjoy you participating. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful week.
Bye-bye. Do.
Da.